Wow, that was a bit of a technical moment. Welcome in, everybody. I'd like to welcome you to this wonderful second stream that I've got going on here. It's great to be back on live stream. We did this last week, actually last Saturday, and I told you at the end of the chat there that I was trying to make this more of a regular thing. So welcome back, everybody. And today we're going to be doing a bit of kind of the same thing that I was doing on the last stream. Hi, welcome in R262 versus Stadler. Welcome back to the chat. Today we're going to be playing a little bit of a classic game that I used to play on stream before, back when I streamed on TikTok, and I can tell you that that was definitely a time. Baku, welcome back in as well. You know, I'm gonna be streaming some NIMBY Rails tonight, and we're gonna get that cracking as soon as we can. So for those of you who do not know, NIMBY Rails is actually an excellent game where you can actually plan out different transit routes in real world scenarios, kind of simulating like real life on a real map of the world. It's kind of an incredible game to some extent. It's got some limitations, but I think it's pretty great. Skitch, welcome in. Thank you so much. And guys, I really got to appreciate everybody out there for tuning into the stream. You know, really appreciate all your support of you all hopping on and watching the stream. But today we're going to be playing some NIMBY Rails. I'll be answering any questions you guys have, and we're going to have a super fun stream tonight. All right. Sorry, sometimes there's just a super loud vehicle outside, or you know, you get a little distracted. But eyes on the prize here, and we're going to get rolling on NIMBY Rails. NIMBY Rails is one of my favorites. It's all, you know, I wouldn't say that I'm like the most amazingly like this is the game I'll play all the time, but for a fun game to play on stream, I think it's really up there. I honestly think this is my favorite one to play on stream. We're going to start a new one, and we're also going to have those settings on because money does not need to be a factor in gaming. But yeah, we're going to get rolling on that. Am I going to make a Dallas video? You know, in due time, I think there will be a Dallas video at some point, one of these days. But you get, as you can see in game, you get this wonderful projection of the entire world, and you can zoom in on wherever you want to build transit. It's got some weird warping, but that's mainly because of the map. But it's really quite the game, and I think I'm gonna start in Portland on this run. But yeah, it's really gonna be we're gonna have a really good time here today, folks. Another good podcast as always. Thanks for introducing more people to the Rio Grande plan. Yeah, it really is something quite special, isn't it, going on down there in Salt Lake City. It definitely does have the potential of really changing the city in a lot of good ways, especially for regional rail purposes and for, you know, just being able to move the city, you know, in a more frequent way and building up those nice walkable neighborhoods. I'm halfway through your Radio Free Urbanism episode with the Rio Grande Plan folks. Yeah, the Rio Grande Plan folks are actually really wonderful people. I got to meet them in person back in August, and yeah, they're all pretty great. Frederick, Jenny. I met Frederick and Christian. Those were the two who I met as part of the Rio Grande project. But they're both great. They're both great people, and they both really want to do something good for their community. SEPTA train is currently on fire in Delaware County. That just does not surprise me with SEPTA. The money in the game is a joke anyways. I have one high-speed rail line that makes me $300 million a day, so I have over $200 billion in the bank. Hi, greetings to all the night for this nightly live, 2:15 a.m. here. I'm guessing that's probably somewhere in Europe. That'd be my guess, probably the UK, but, you know, I'm just guessing. I'm from Philly, by the way. Hung out with Alan a few times back in 2022. Yeah, Alan's a pretty chill guy. I've hung out with him a couple of times. He actually came to visit Portland pretty recently, so yeah, we hung out. All right, we're gonna zoom in on my new hometown here. This is Portland, Oregon. I'm sure some of you are mildly familiar with this city, but yeah, this is kind of where I reside now. But we're gonna be doing a bit of transit planning here today, and I think since we have a nice fresh map here, we should probably go ahead and build a nice east-west line first, because you can't go wrong with the east-west line. I mean, that's how this whole system started. Thoughts on the OC streetcar? Well, the OC streetcar, honestly, it's kind of coming in along with the Omaha streetcar. It's kind of the last wave of the Obama era funded downtown streetcar circulators that are mainly just meant to connect very close neighborhoods to downtown. And they definitely do have their purpose. Don't get me wrong, they have their purpose. But they also have some serious limitations. And I really think that we probably won't see a whole lot more streetcars of that style in the US. But I think what their impact could be is incredibly successful, especially if cities continue to build upon them. Because if we stop building and adding and improving on those streetcars, then we're really not doing anything right. Paris. That's a good one. I still need to get out to Europe at some point. But Paris's metro is definitely something that's insanely impressive. You should check out the Place Institute. They just hosted an event with Wes Marshall. That's kind of exciting. All right. So, here, one of the cool things about the game, I always love turning this on, but it is the population layer. And what you can see is actually a really, really good indication of, your regional populations around the city. So you can see more dense neighborhoods and less dense neighborhoods within the city as well too. I think one real downside of the game is that it only really takes into factor population density and not trip generation. So it doesn't take into facts like commercial and office trips here. But otherwise, that's something they still need to work on with the game, honestly, because I feel like airport trips should probably mean more. And I feel like trips to, areas such as, for example, this is Clackamas Town Center here. It's a pretty big shopping destination, but it does generate quite a few different trips down over here for ridership. I know that there's this higher density population center over here, but the mall itself is also a big trip generator as a commercial space. Portland resident here, let's see if you can improve TriMet/CTran. Yeah, I'd really love to improve both of them, honestly. They're both fairly solid, but they definitely do need some work. There are some Steam mods that generate the work trips. I'm sure there are. I just really think that they should be added into the vanilla game. Like, it's something that should probably be added in. I think a video about the Calgary CTran LRT and why it's been so successful would be useful to learn lessons from it. Yeah, I think it would be too. One thing that they do well in Calgary is not sprawl as much as we do here in the U.S. They just have gotten their sprawl significantly more under control. Now, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make a underground station because this is a game, and I have unlimited money. So I'm going to go and I'm going to build a underground metro station for downtown Portland. And we're going to I'm going to try and center the network around Pioneer Courthouse like it is right now. But we're going to see what we can do. I kind of want to make an actual heavy rail metro system for the city. Because I think, that's a high-speed tunnel, isn't it? Okay, we might want to cancel that. If you may or may not know, I'm not like the most incredible player of this game, so there's definitely some mild struggles, but I wish the West ran more frequently. I think all of us in Portland do. It is quite an important little station, it's an important little system that we have out here. Oh my gosh, I am having oh my goodness, I forgot to select we're having a fun time today, I'll tell you that right now. You know what? We're just gonna how do I yes, we're gonna delete the station. I told you guys I can read. Don't worry. But yeah, Wes is a severely overlooked service out here, and it really could be a lot more effective than it is now if it actually had some good investment into it. Unfortunately, though, the city kind of sees it as just a commuter only service and not an actual system that people in Wilsonville or Tigard or Beaverton or even people from the other parts of the region could actually use for legitimate service to get around the city. So we're gonna start with a nice little north-south line here. Give me a second here. I really hope they extend the max into Southwest Portland, Beaverton, and Tigard to replace the west and potentially loop the orange line and even all the way to the green line, but the NIMBYs won't allow it. I think you're probably not giving Portland enough credit here. I think there's a lot of still transit support in the city. But honestly, I don't think that the NIMBYs are as strong as you think they are, because there is a lot of support right now for rail within the state. And I think if the city decides to build the Southwest Corridor, or if TriMet decides to build the Southwest Corridor, but do it right and do a lot less street running with it, I think it could be very effective for moving people in and out of the downtown area and around the region in general. So yeah, SEPTA train did catch fire about an hour ago in Wilmington Newark line. Thankfully, everyone was evacuated safely, but the lead car is a charred hulk. Yeah, I hate when that happens, especially because legacy systems are very prone to that happening. Just older rolling stock is just going to do that, and sometimes it just doesn't mesh well with some of the newer systems that the trains have. Yo, hey, do you normally stream? Am I only finding out about this now, or is this a new thing? This is, in fact, a brand new thing. I started this last Saturday, and we're kind of getting into the streaming now. So we're into streaming. Let's see. I think if we're gonna go east-west, we're already in a tunnel, so we should probably go up this little incline here up and make a station right on Burnside. I think that could be very effective. There's a lot of high density development, a lot of trip generation over here. And yeah, I think it'd just be kind of perfect for just a nice little station to kind of connect up to Burnside over here. We'll see what we can do. I do need to get a north-south line here. Aeon, this is NIMBY Rails. It's a game that kind of uses real-world data to allow you to transit plan. It's kind of a sweet game. All right. I'm trying to think here because I wanted it to run through Pioneer Square here, but if we want to go east-west, we're going to need to kind of hook north just a little bit to kind of get that higher ridership area in the Lloyd District. Or I guess we could kind of just keep going east-west and eventually we'll hit Gresham anyways, but I think that's what we're going to do. I think that is what we are going to do. I'm trying to remember street names around here, but they're just not super obvious. I'm going to St. Petersburg this summer to see my family, and I can't wait to take the public transit for once. Frequent buses, metro, and suburban rail. Which St. Petersburg are we talking about, Maxim? That's actually kind of interesting. Considering the cars involved are going on 50 years, reliability was always going to be an issue. This has got to light a metaphorical fire under SEPTA's ass to get some new ones finally. I wish I could agree on that. I just don't see SEPTA being really all super excited to get new rolling stock. I feel like that's just not their thing. They really got to run a cheap operation out there. I hope you're right about the NIMBYs. I grew up in Southwest Portland / Beaverton, and there were a lot of anti-max sentiment and petitioning. Yeah, but the problem is that a lot of that petitioning is being done by a very vocal minority on this, because there are a lot of people in Tigard who do benefit from TriMet out there, and Beaverton as well, who benefit heavily from TriMet. And actually building it would be a major improvement to the city. And just the overall region in general. I'm going to turn on that. That's a little station influence icon. We're going to turn off the signal light cones and the signals themselves. So we can actually see the kind of ridership shed. I think it's kind of a little bit too big for the game, but, you know, it fits. I can't imagine it's St. Pete in Florida. Yeah, I mean, there is the Sunrunner. They do have the buses, but other than that, I mean, yeah, you're kind of dealing with a bit of a miserable transit experience out in St. Pete, Florida. Hey, I just watched your congestion pricing video. Great stuff. I was wondering, what do you think a ballpark metro population would be to justify congestion pricing? That's a really good question. I think it's more or less not so much on a metro area population, but more so on the transit in the region and the walkability of the region as well. Does your region facilitate the ability to move many people by bike, walking, and transit, and other multimodal abilities to move through a city? Or is your city very car dependent? Because I think the more transit, the more walkability, and the more cycling friendly that your city is, you're going to be able to actually deal with implementing congestion pricing a little bit easier, especially if your city's more dense. Then it really all depends more or less on the neighborhood in general, because I think smaller cities could absolutely implement congestion pricing if they have the transit. The problem is that we just don't have a whole lot of great North American examples. Which is a shame, honestly. I really wish we had some better examples in North America that could really be a great, piece of influence for congestion pricing for more cities in the country, but we just don't have that quite yet. Soon though, I'm sure we will soon. Austin, welcome into the chat. They're getting them for the trolleys and the Market Frankfurt line at least, and they have a concept for what they want the new cars, or what they want for the new cars to put out. Manufacturers, they should add new urgency. Yeah, I thought they got the Hitachi deal with just a couple. Yeah, probably about a year ago at this point with SEPTA. That's going to be pretty exciting now. But yeah, regional rail definitely needs some upgrades. Some of those trains are getting quite long in the tooth. That totally makes sense. I was just thinking what it would take for my city, and it's going to be having more ways into downtown besides cars. Yeah, congestion pricing is more of a reactive kind of response that you want to make. It's kind of reacting to a car culture that just won't go away, because at the federal level, we still heavily subsidize vehicles. And it really, at this point, if you can't make that federal change, you can at least go and get your city to do the local change and actually implement fees to make up for the cost and damage that cars can cause on central parts of the city. Ah, cool, NIMBY rails. Yeah, that's right, Austin. We're running some NIMBY rails. It's kind of a hard game to get into, but I mean, it's still pretty fun. Every downtown area should have congestion pricing, in my opinion. I mean, I would agree to some extent, but at the end of the day, some downtowns just aren't doing as well as others, and just having anybody being able to get into downtown is a good idea. Some downtowns just don't drive the same amount of car traffic into them as other ones naturally. But yeah, cities like New York City could absolutely implement congestion pricing, and they did, which is a great thing. Other cities I could see doing it would be like Boston. I did say it in the video as well. In the patron section, I said Chicago should probably implement it for the loop, and maybe some of the surrounding neighborhoods. Let's think about some other cities. San Francisco could probably get away with it, definitely for downtown. It's really hard because you have to think of cities that already have fairly decent transit networks and also have downtowns that aren't kind of struggling transit or economically. Because if you take a hit, give a hit to the cars, then oh, is my stream lagging? Oh no. Oh no. Hello? All right, we're back. Okay, beautiful, perfect. So yeah, I mean, DC, I mentioned it in the video as well too. Another really great city that can implement congestion pricing. Great connections via the DC Metro. The buses are solid. The bike network is still growing, and I think that that's really promising for DC. But yeah, some other cities in North America, if we include Canada, Toronto should probably implement congestion pricing. Vancouver is a 100%, and Montreal is probably another one that could probably do it as well too, especially with how much they've been funding their downtown's transit with the REM. What else do we got going on in chat? Do you think a Portland tunnel would make up for Max's lack of ring routes? Well, the thing is that in North America, ring routes are kind of an incredibly rare thing to find, especially just when it comes down to rail transit. Most U.S. cities don't want to invest in any sort of ring routes. DC is probably the first exception to it. You could maybe argue the G train in New York City, but for the most part, most metros go through downtown, service to and from downtown. So having these ring routes is super helpful. But yeah, I mean, the downtown tunnel is kind of not so much a want; it's a need for Portland's Max. If you don't have that kind of support for your system, you really do want that kind of downtown moving fast through it and having that throughput that you can definitely use. Hey, the Silver Line is trying. That's right. Dallas Fort Worth is kind of doing a ring route, but Dallas is kind of a weird situation where I wouldn't even argue that it's really one polar area. Yeah, most of the lines do run into downtown Dallas, but the DFW metro area is very multipolar, kind of like Los Angeles and the Bay Area, and so having that is definitely going to be a massive improvement to the transit in the region. What's going on? There we go. All right, everything's working fine. I thought I had some technical difficulties on my end, but apparently we don't. Thank you so much for coming out, everybody. I really appreciate all this support in chat. Y'all are awesome. All the likes are much appreciated. And I have a video also coming out next week, so I hope you guys are excited for that one as well, too. I did not mean to place a station there, but I mean, it wasn't a horrible spot. There is an abandoned freight railway in my small town of New Albany that connects to downtown Louisville. Could it be feasible to implement like many of the interurbans in Texas, like the Silver Line? I mean, I think we have to get diesel multiple units a little bit cheaper in the United States. But yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely a strong possibility that it could be implemented, especially if your city has the funds to do so. Hi, Will Auction. Welcome in. Regional rail that goes between the little blips of density is the play. Yeah, I mean, in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, absolutely. There's just so much sprawl that it just goes crazy out in the region, and you want to absolutely make sure that you can connect it with that fast public transportation. There are cities that can get away with slower public transportation because they have that walkability and that density. But in Dallas, you don't have either for the most part. So connecting those little spots that do have it is kind of crucial to your whole transit plan in the region. I'm sure my route would look a lot different too if I had like Google Maps overlaid on this, because then I could see like where like some more dense buildings are and actually put stations next to them, but unfortunately I cannot. But this still gives me a good density map, and I think that's what we really need. Rah, I love public transportation. Yeah, it's pretty sick, isn't it? Being able to get places without having to get in a car and pay a whole bunch of money for gas. It's pretty awesome. Is there a reason why WMATA didn't put development around Loudoun Gateway? The station only got an infrequent buses and a huge parking garage. I think that's kind of what you have when you have that old school mindset of people are going to park and ride to the station. And I think even in great agencies like WMATA, you still do run into that issue of people still park and ride, and there's just kind of this thought process around that. Stations have been getting better with transit-oriented development, but I think also as well too, the Silver Line just was trying to get done. But it might also be local parking regulations. I don't live in DC, so I can't really speak on the specific laws there, but they may have had some sort of limiting factor out in Loudoun County that made them significantly more parking than they should have been. If American cities started dedicating lanes from the highways to city buses, wouldn't that do the trick? Yeah, the problem is as well too is that we don't have that many city buses running along highways. We do have some express buses on highways, and when we do those projects where we actually have express buses on highways, they are incredibly successful. I think of the J line in Los Angeles, and I also think of Pace Pulse in in Chicago. These expresses to downtown or to other parts of the city and basically turning buses into rapid transit, so BRT, is a really great option to design your cities and design your transit network on the cheap and actually have some good ridership at decent speeds. Rob, welcome into the live stream. Really much appreciated that you joined in here. I heard that Dulles might be to blame. Yeah, I think so. I think that could possibly be the reason, especially if you have height limitations in the county, too. It's a little bit harder to build transit-oriented development when you can only go like 3 stories high. DART is a great society's metro, LARPing as a light rail. I'd say it's a light rail, LARPing as a great society's metro. It just does not have the stop spacing to be a great society's metro. DART is, I think DART is good, honestly. I think a lot of people like to overhate on it. I think it's fine. I think its real major problem is, one, it runs at grade in downtown, which I will always say is the worst thing you can do for your light rail, especially if you want it to be higher speed service. But realistically, DART's biggest problem is land use around stations. And they have wonderful parking lots surrounding stations, but they don't have the political power in the Dallas-Fort Worth region to actually change that. I live in a pretty small city where everyone gets scared if any planned building is more than 5 stories, and I wish it was politically possible to have an elevated rail line through downtown. Yeah, I think that'd be kind of hard to do if you can't even get a building that's over 5 stories. But yeah, I mean, I would love some elevated rail. I love elevated rail. It's probably my favorite type of rail, especially since I have that FOMR mentality in my mind of I love getting a great shot of transit on my cameras. If you see me out in the wild, there's a good chance I'll probably be recording transit on my cameras, whether it's my main mirrorless camera, whether it's my little Osmo Pocket, or even my phone if I don't have either one of those things. But elevated rail kind of scratches that itch of I can get really good footage and decent lighting of the trains, which is awesome, you know. But I can't hate on trains and tunnels either. Trains and tunnels are awesome. You can't beat that. I mean, it really is wonderful. Urban Avenues, thank you so much for the super chat. Much appreciated. Treat yourself. I will do so. I will do that. You know what? You basically paid for my monster tonight, and I gotta appreciate that one. At least DART has its own row downtown. Yeah, that's a good start. That is a great start. Max out here in Portland technically has its own dedicated lanes and signal preemption as well, too. But the problem is that even with that, you still are limited in speeds thanks to pedestrians and the vehicles as well. So you're limited to like, I think it's like 40 miles an hour, or not 40, but like 30 miles an hour, which isn't horrible, but you could definitely do a lot better than that. I run at grade and any thoughts on TexRail in Fort Worth? Yeah, I think it's a solid system. I don't think it's bad. I think the service operation is good. It runs almost 24/7. But its real problem, much like DART, is just land use around stations. I mean, if you're trying to get from Fort Worth to the airport, it's pretty great. But if you're trying to get anywhere else in Fort Worth, or I mean in the Dallas-Fort Worth area or anywhere on that line, good chance it's mostly just a parking lot. So, I mean, like, that's the problem with a lot of transit in the U.S. is that even if we run great service, we still haven't gotten the land use situation figured out. And it should be pretty easy. I mean, building over a parking lot is probably one of the easiest things we can do in terms of infill development. But we just haven't done it. And a lot of that comes down to our older land regulations that we have and our zoning codes too. And just getting those fixed so that way we can actually do the kind of development that we want to that will actually improve our cities would be quite nice to see. Getting close on this eastern extension of the line. I think that's pretty fine for its western end. Northside Station is asked to be honest for the TexRail. I haven't seen it, but you know what? Let's take a little break. Actually, let's go into Google Maps. Okay. What's it called? I said Northside Station. It's Northside Station from Will Peterson. Ooh, we've got a station choice of all time. Oh my goodness. We could yeah, that's what happens when you get a nice little line developed in the middle of industrial area. Like, this is an awesome service for those who don't know. This is a DMU, so diesel multiple unit service between Dallas Fort Worth and or the Dallas Fort Worth Airport and Fort Worth, Texas. And it's kind of really good service. Like, I think it's like every 30 minutes throughout most of the day. But its big problem is you get land use around stations like this. Like, there's just nothing. Like, Texan Rhino, you won't even get stabbed because there's just nothing around here. Or, sorry, not Texan Rhino. Boku, you won't even get stabbed around here because there's just nothing. My ass driving 20 minutes out of the way just to take the commuter rail, that's so real. I just love when trams light rail have higher speed limits than the cars running in the neighboring lanes. Yeah, that is pretty cool too. But yeah, like, it's this land use around our stations that really just makes sure that no one is going to take transit. With this kind of poor land use, I mean, we just don't see any transit ridership because of it. I'm sure people would love to live around North Richland Hills / Smithfield Station, but for the most part, you don't have the opportunity to because it's a warehouse, a parking lot, an even worse parking lot, and then some occasional single-family homes, which I'm sure there's not even the opportunity to walk to from because there's no sidewalks in this neighborhood. There's no sidewalks, and this is 5 minutes from the station. This is actually, like, insane by any standard. Like, you quite literally live this close to the station, and there's no way to walk to it. Insane. I just love some of our development that we have here in North America. It just really makes zero sense. Mercantile Station is probably worse. Well, you know what? At least there is a multi-use pathway that kind of goes by it, which I'll give it credit. I really like when multi-use pathways flank rail corridors. Really kind of adds on to the usefulness, especially in multimodal transit, because if you are somewhere, like, say your destination is halfway between the stations, you can bring your bike with you, hop on that bike for like a mile between that station and your next destination, and be there. It's perfect. It's really a great way to connect at the last minute. That last mile of transit is probably the most important thing for transit, but yeah, I mean, it's that land use that's making a good service almost not used whatsoever. Let's see. Arlington doesn't have buses. Be nice. If there was a DFW Six Flags Sports Complex University line, it's in the 15-ish minute range, but perceived use cases make sense, mainly as last mile from TRE. Yeah, that's fair. I mean, I wish Arlington had more transit. I mean, it could definitely justify it, even if it was just a shuttle to the stadiums from the city. But other than that, I mean, yeah. The street is good wide, good chance it has a speeding problem. Yeah, I mean, basically every street in the U.S. has a speeding problem, but, you know, there's not too much we can do other than, you know, helping the actually design streets to be for safe speeds. Now, this Grapevine station is pretty good here. I mean, by Texas standards, this is like the best walkable urbanism money can buy, but other than that, I mean, most of the land use really isn't great. But if you're trying to get to Grapevine, I mean, there's no better way than taking the Tex rail. I mean, it's just one stop down the street and you're there. Silver Line, Tex Rail, and A-Train lines all have them. Yeah, they all have the DMUs on those lines. The A-Train's kind of weird because I believe it was this county or this city up over here near Denton, one of these places. This area just did not want to join DART. And so what happened is that you just had this whole separate agency rather than a DART extension to the Green Line. I have an internship in Aspen over the summer. Well, that's exciting. That's actually great to hear. Really nice to hear. Well, congratulations on that. The Roaring Fork Valley in Colorado has a fantastic rapid bus transit service. Interesting. Okay, that's interesting to hear. We need more headway in cities. Yeah, I think we do. Honestly, I think we definitely do. I think 15 minutes on a lot of lines just isn't good enough. And we should probably step that number up. All right, let's get connecting on this line here. Ooh, Trying to do all the auto-locking features possible. This is also a completely underground heavy rail metro that I'm building here for the city of Portland. I don't. Can we go with the straight line or a bit more of a straight line instead of curving like that? Perfect. Beautiful. Oh my goodness. Are you recreating the blue line? Yeah, kind of. I'm also kind of extending it a little bit further as well too to the east. You know how the blue line currently ends in Gresham, at least downtown. This one kind of goes a little bit further down towards Kelly Creek, but yeah, I mean this is kind of like a idealistic heavy rail metro blue line that I'm building here. But Aspen would probably benefit from using rail transit. I'm sure it would. A lot of cities would, but unfortunately a lot of cities also can't justify rail transit, and that's okay. Because if we can make buses good, then that's perfect. I know that doesn't sound like the most ideal answer, but I mean, buses are great too. I mean, a lot of people love to sleep on the bus. Well, sleep on buses as a usable mode of transportation, but they work well, especially if they have the speed to them. If you give your buses priority, people will enjoy them. All right, now we get to building the under the river tunnel. Perfect. All right. And for the cost of $192 million, we have rebuilt the blue line, but as a heavy rail metro. This might be understating the cost just a little bit, but it don't matter. Northside Station could be a 10-minute walk to the stockyards as the crow flies, but in real life, not so much. Yeah, it's also just... I hate that cities just really do not care about investing in their actual transit. Nothing upsets me more than when a city just forgets to be like, walking infrastructure. Because sidewalks are so important. Even if you have bad sidewalks, it's going to generate more ridership to your system than no sidewalks and just desired use paths. Add 2 zeros. Yeah, that's true. You think you can give a brief tutorial on this game? I mean, I could probably get you started on building lines, but like there's like modifications to stations that you can make and stuff like that I just do not know very well. And I wouldn't feel qualified in, like directing on how to actually build them. But yeah, this game goes quite deep, but I could teach you how to at least set up a station. And I mean, as much as I don't think it could hurt to make one gaming video eventually. Here we go, and we are going to create we just need to create a new line. And we're gonna confuse it with our real life and make it blue. TexRail is going to have a new station in the coming years. Are they doing some infill there? Nah, maybe 1.92 billion. Yeah, pretty accurate. Well, I mean, to be fair, I guess I didn't really study I didn't really conduct an environmental study or do any community output. This just kind of got tunneled underneath the city, so maybe we save some money there. Who knows? All right. Wacky choice, but they're planning TOD for it. Well, that's good. I mean, any TOD is good. Still insane that DFW is building their 4th commuter rail while Houston can't even build a measly BRT line. Oh, yeah, that's right. Well, I mean, it's more or less... Houston's BRT is being sabotaged by its current government there, who really just does not like transit in the slightest, and it's really annoying when cities do that. We're gonna go with this Kaio because they have the capacity that we need, because this is going to be a very popular line, and it's going to be, yeah, it's just going to be the most effective for this route. I'm going to put 14 trains on it for the cost of $184 million. So I guess that technically brings the cost into like 400 million for the service. Oh boy, I think I forgot how to put these in service. Can you build a dual track tunnel? Can't you build a dual track tunnel? Yeah, I did build a dual track tunnel for the system. Oh. I'm just trying to go with local services. They have done a little bit of updating to the game, which is kind of cool. We are going to do passenger service now. Transit in Houston versus Dallas is very Salt Lake City versus Denver coded. Do you want quality or quantity? Yeah, I mean, I guess so. I guess Houston has less lines, but they are higher ridership and probably better zoned around them. But like, I don't know. I mean, it just doesn't. I just can't. I mean, do I have any trains running on the system? Yes, I do. Okay, they're just getting implemented in. Got it. Got it. Oh, we've got the game speed all the way down. That's why. There we go. Let's speed up service there. Yeah, we got solid frequency. There's good ridership on the network. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, yeah, it's some cities, yeah, they definitely do have a paired city where it's like one is definitely better than the other in some ways, and the other one is doing better in other ways. Like, for instance, Denver versus Salt Lake City very much is the a very like city versus city rivalry that is also like very transit oriented as well too, because Denver has a very wide network, but it just lacks the effectiveness that Salt Lake City has. Denver has some good lines, like the A line is awesome, that airport connection is great, but in terms of a total network, outside of the A line, I don't think you could really point to a line in Denver that's more effective than any line in Salt Lake City. I would honestly argue, I'm going to get a little crazy here, a little controversial here. I would argue that there is no line that makes more sense than any line in Salt Lake City other than the A line. Well, in Denver, that makes more sense than the A line. So the A line is probably the best of all the Denver and Salt Lake City lines, but then after that, Salt Lake City takes all of it, and then Denver's lines are all beneath that. Denver's got some pretty rough light rail, and Utah with Salt Lake City has done a pretty effective job. I would even say that the streetcar in Salt Lake City is more effective than most of the Denver light rail. And this all comes down to transit-oriented development, and I'll show you what I mean by that. Give me 1 second here. I'll show you what I mean by that in terms of like land use. When I say that Salt Lake City has done a better job on land use for its stations. Like, there are still some stinkers, don't get me wrong. There are still some stinkers in that network. Like, it's not entirely perfect. Like, I mean, like, this station right here, the Bingham, not South Jordan, but Bingham Highway is kind of like one of my examples of like the worst transit station you could ever plan. But I mean, even out here on the end of the red line, out here in Daybreak, they're doing some pretty solid transit-oriented development. I mean, you can still see it all popping up around the stations. And that's going to be good for ridership in the future. But even that like poor zoning is kind of the exception, because even areas like the Sugar Hills or the S Line streetcar is still much better than what you might see out in Denver. I mean, like here, let me show you. You have all this development right here, right next to the streetcar. This is all apartments. You come down a little bit further, you can see this whole corridor is just a lot of formerly apartments being turned into mixed use. It's kind of crazy how effective they got this land use on the streetcar, and how it actually still gets ridership even during like midday sections, and it crosses these horrible stroads, but it still gets good ridership. It's kind of crazy. But you got to appreciate when a city knows how to do it right, even when it is kind of just, the most bare bones streetcar extension possible to the network. But like, it really is, even with the horrible stroads that exist out in Salt Lake City, it's still more effective than what you'll see across most of Denver. You've got this good area, but I mean, like, it's cut through by the highway, which isn't awesome. But I think the green one is called the R line, if I'm not mistaken. Denver heads, can you please fact check me on that one? But yeah, it's the R, and it's got some. It's one of the few radial rail lines, which is a good thing. We need more of those in cities, but its routing is so value engineered to death that it hurts the system. And they've also done some serious cutbacks on frequency, where I think this line is only running every 30 minutes. The pessimist sees bad land use while the optimist sees TOD opportunities. Yeah, I would agree with that too. Any parking lot around a mall is such a gold mine for TOD. Like, this town center at Aurora is like perfectly centered. This station right here is like beautifully centered to be TOD, but the fact that they haven't done it is just mind-boggling to me. But yeah, most of the RTD light rail network is very value engineered to get built out, and I would say the same is kind of true for their regional rail network, and how it just kind of cut short because their whole thing was it being a public-private partnership that needed to get out as soon as service was, able to. It's good, don't get me wrong. It runs electrified regional rail. That's something that's incredibly rare in the US. But this green line right here was planned to go to Boulder initially, and it still hasn't gotten much further than what's this final station here? Than Westminster Station. Which is it's just kind of disappointing. I also love this little nub line here. Like, you could tell that they were trying to center this before Denver Union got its whole rehab. You could tell that they were trying to center this part of downtown as their main focus of like light rail, and you just have this little line that just kind of goes up over into this neighborhood over here. I'm not too familiar with Denver. I'm so sorry about that, but Denver RTD is quite strange, but it isn't bad. It's not horrible. Like, it could definitely be better. Like, they've definitely made some mistakes in the past, but if you're not making mistakes, then you're usually not trying when it comes to a transit network. The SLC grid is the way it is because it was, I know how it is. It was very much planned by Brigham Young to be kind of this set out network for easy turning horses and stuff like that, and being like this very like image of Zion City. But yeah, I mean, Denver could really use some serious work on making transit better, because I mean, Colfax, I know this is getting a BRT construction. I was reminded of that on the last live, but I mean, the density I see on Colfax here looks like it could definitely use some sort of actual metro line, at least light rail rather than, just BRT. But Denver's an interesting city. I do want to get out there one of these days. I'm a sucker for random light rail systems, and I'm also a sucker for regional rail. So, yeah, hopefully I can get out to Denver soon. Also, this A line is awesome. Just the peak of regional rail, of what you want your regional rail to the airport to be like. But other than that, I mean, it's just kind of an interesting city transit wise. I do like RTD's schemes for all their light rail trains and the regional rail and buses. I think it looks cool as a logo, but yeah, it definitely needs some serious work. Soda with ice cream, 1 pound of sugar made them efficient. Yeah, that's true. Many people are saying that Swig made the whole Trax network great. Minneapolis light rail is pretty good. Yes, it is. I would agree as well. They just need to build that out more as well too. You only really have 2 lines. You have the one that runs from the airport through from Mall of America through the airport into downtown. And then you got the one that runs past the university into St. Paul. And those are both very effective uses for their system. They are, I think they're building an extension to either the blue or the green out over here into some poor land use area to the west of the city. But, I mean, they've been doing really well with their buses. But other than that, I mean, it's like they really do need to step up on building some more light rail out there. But buses are an effective strategy of building up a transit network, but they really do need to step up some of their light rail as well, too. And making the North Star here an actual good regional rail line rather than having like 3 round trips a day. You know, Minneapolis light rail is good when they have a song about it. I have not heard that. I've not heard that. The W line is good. I'll go back to Denver over here and take a look at the W line. The W is the blue line, right? Oh, yes, it is. Yes, my favorite thing about the W is that you can access Casa Bonita from the W line. And I think it's probably the highest ridership out of any of the light rail lines, if I'm not mistaken. We're going to have the fun search here. Yeah, see, it's in a strip mall right off the W line and a Lamar. But yeah, I mean, it's got some interesting quirks. I think all light rail systems in North America do. My favorite is whatever this is they got going on over here. This is kind of a silly little thing going on. But in Portland, we have our little silly little thing going on with our light rail over at wonderful Sunset Transit Center, which does this. It's definitely a choice to build your light rail like this and over engineering weird ways to make your system less efficient. But you know, it is what it is out here. I believe the plan was the blue head towards Target HQ and the green to the southwest. Blue line extension might get gutted, not enough info. Okay, good to know. I'll have to keep my eyes on it because Minneapolis is very much a growing transit city, and it's also a growing bike city. I mean, people say it's the most bike-friendly city in the U.S., so, I mean, you got to take their word on it. But, yeah, I mean, I also want to get back to the Twin Cities, too. They're very intriguing, and they have some great urbanism in them as well, too, and some great bike infrastructure, but it's always cool getting to see. I technically have been on the Minneapolis light rail. It's just been, like, 15 years, so yeah, it's definitely a good little network they got going on, especially with their buses too. Let's take a look at the chat again. Can you look at the LIRR Metro North prices? I feel like they're too expensive to really incentivize people to use the trains. Yeah, I think they are quite expensive out there. I think I remember trying to go like one stop on the LIRR. I was trying to just ride it for shits and giggles, and I remember just being like, nah, that's just too much. It was to get to like Woodside, and I think it was like $5 or $6. It was just ridiculous. But yeah, I mean, like, transit should be affordable to some extent, but also you should be able to charge quite a bit to take transit if you're going a long way, but I think if you're just going one stop, it shouldn't be $6. All right. Bike-friendly city, Davis, California wins, and it's not even close. If we're going for small cities, yeah, I think I could agree with that. Davis is a lovely little city. I've shown some footage from Davis. Last time I was in Sacramento, I made the one little stop hop on the Capitol Corridor, because I've always wanted to check out Davis, and Davis is really good because it just doesn't have the same kind of sprawl that other cities do. It's got a university, so that really adds to the bike trips that go through the city. And yeah, it's connected well by buses and by intercity rail, so you do get some really great connectivity with with going around Davis. And even just being a pedestrian here is just such a nice experience. I remember pretty much walking halfway across town, and it didn't even feel like I was really doing anything in terms of like strenuous walking. Like, the city is just so well designed for walkability. You could see this street parking kind of goes crazy, and that's because it's mostly street parking. There's not really a whole lot of lots. There are some small ones, but other than that, I mean, the city tries to limit the amount of cars that go into it. There's a lot of pedestrian street closures as well here too in Davis, and it really just makes for a nice, enjoyable space to be in. This little area right here, I remember, was closed off, and it might still be, but it had bollards to be like a nice pedestrian space. So I don't know if that's changed recently or not. This is from like pre-pandemic, but at least during the pandemic, they did something to actually turn that into a pedestrian space. But Davis is a really nice city to be in. Just also as well, the street trees are wonderful too. It was like 90 degrees the day I was there, and it just didn't feel like it because the canopy coverage and the foliage there was just wonderful. They did a great job with housing setbacks as well too, being pretty much set up against the road. It really is kind of that small. It's really what you would see like strong towns wanting to strive for, like in terms of being like not super transit heavy, but being very walkable and bikeable and not having that sprawl, but being connected to other cities through rail and by bus as well too. So it had that kind of like strong towns feel, and I really don't understand why strong towns doesn't talk about Davis, California just a little bit more, because if you want to go for that more, economical approach, Davis is kind of the ideal town. But yeah, Davis is the US Biking Hall of Fame. Oh, that's awesome. I actually didn't know that. That's pretty sweet. Is Davis benefiting from good legacy urbanism, or has it more recently been intentionally made walkable? Davis is like the legacy urbanist city. So UC Davis really had a lot of urban planning people here, and they actually had the first dedicated bike lane, like protected bike lane, in like modern concept of one in North America. So you can really thank Davis for even having a good protected bike lane, because they were right up with like the Netherlands in terms of pioneering like safe streets and good bike designs as well too. So it's kind of a legacy system. They need to do a little bit of better job on some of the greenways in the city, but overall, I think Davis is a very, very nice place to be. Just really good to cycle into, and I highly recommend doing that. But transit is also not a bad experience in Davis either. Unitrans, their transit agency, is quite effective at getting people around, especially students. And YOLO Bus, which is the county's bus service, does a good job of actually connecting the city to other areas. We can actually take a look at some of what's going on out there. But yeah, no, I would say it's got some legacy systems, but I mean they've been trying to innovate as well too. So it's not all just it's not all old legacy infrastructure, but it is good stuff out there. Dang, I'm heavy breathing in that clip. You can tell it was like 200 degrees. What's my opinion about Greyhound? I don't hate Greyhound. I really haven't used that many intercity buses in the US. It could definitely be something that I really wish the US could, step up service on again, because we have been kind of faltering, especially because we've been relying on the private industry to take over buses. But intercity buses in the US going around the country by bus is something that's still very important for a lot of people, and I think saving that and actually building up a national network of that would be significantly better than what we have right now. If only the rest of the US followed Davis's path. Yeah, it would be really nice if the rest of the US followed Davis's path. Some really nice pedestrian spaces. I do want to also mention too that I was walking out here at like 8 or 9 in the morning during the middle of summer. So like not exactly a time where Davis is super packed because students aren't in town. And also it's early in the morning. So who wants to really be going out early in the morning? Any coffee shop I walked by though was like absolutely slammed with people though. So, but I mean, it seemed like it was pleasant to drive in Davis too. It wasn't like it was like a horrible experience to do that. But yeah, like Davis is a very wonderful city. I mean, I can't lie to you guys there. I mean, it's definitely quite the space. I mean, you can see this mixed use development over here. Nice little food mart right next to some housing, and it truly does provide that wonderful walkable experience that people want. I love Charlotte Blue Line because they put crossing gates on the median running section. Yes, that is important. If you're going to run in the median, you do want those crossing gates and giving trains all the priority that they can possibly get, because if you take that away from them, then you slow down the service, you get more people into driving, and you get less people on the train, which keeps going on that death spiral, and then you don't get any good service because no one wants to take the train. So having that priority always for rail transit service. I can travel around my state fairly easily by bus. Anywhere out of state, there aren't any good options. Yeah, and that's because Greyhound has been kind of starting to suffer because, for one, the pandemic really wasn't kind to Greyhound or any other bus services. But on top of that, a lot of them got bought out, and they've been trying to minimize costs as much as possible. And that includes selling bus stations and cutting a bunch of routes. So yeah, a lot of cities can't get that nice bus service because that would add another option to get in between cities, especially smaller ones that normally won't get rail connections or any other connection. I wish California high-speed rail wasn't so expensive and delayed. Me too. Me too. Colorado has a really good state-owned system, some great high-frequency lines in major corridors, and well-used services that serve as rural lines. Yeah, we have something like that as well here too in Portland or in Oregon. It's not like the most amazing service ever, but it does provide a lot of cities with bus service and just getting them connected to transit, which is always a good thing. I have various blue maps, and my twin cities say blue to Maple Grove, PKW via Glen Haven, and green to Southwest. I also add a suburban east-west line from the airport to Minnetonka. Oh, yeah, that's actually quite a good idea. Minneapolis, St. Paul, also another one of those cities that's multipolar, where it doesn't have just one city center. It actually has like three with high destination areas. So connecting all of those and kind of making the Minneapolis St. Paul triangle of light rail would be quite effective. Can you get around Phoenix via public transit? We did have Urban Avenues, who is quite the Phoenix expert, and Skitch, who is also a Phoenix expert, who could probably tell you a little bit more about that. But from my experience, I'd honestly say so. Yeah, I mean, a lot of the destinations you can get around on the Valley Metro Light Rail. If you're trying to get around Tempe, it's pretty easy with the streetcar and Orbit buses as well too. Valley Metro's buses aren't the most amazing in the world. I can't sugarcoat it for you. And land use isn't great in the Phoenix area, but you can get most places by transit out there, and it's not the best, but it isn't the worst either. So, yeah, if you're visiting Phoenix for the most part, if you're not staying in like Scottsdale or I don't know, like Glendale, you could probably get around without a car. Like if you're staying in Phoenix proper or like Tempe, good chance you can get around with to anywhere that you want to go via transit. I went to Phoenix for a day trip, literally, and only took transit and was super happy. Well, actually, not true because I took one Uber to make it to the opening of the Northwest Extension, or else I was going to be super late to that. So as soon as I got into town, I had to Uber immediately from the train station rather than hopping on the light rail for an hour to get up to the new station opening. But other than that, I took the train everywhere, and it was quite exciting. It's always fun to travel to a new city and take transit. It really gives you that good feel of how a city, is. I think transit is one of the best ways you can get a connection to the culture of a city, and I don't think that there really is a better way to do that. Take the bus when you visit somewhere, even if for the most part you're going to be driving where you are. If you're visiting, if it's a super car dependent city, I still urge anybody to take transit at least once or twice in the city. It really gives you a good connection to how the city is and makes you a good tourist too. Central Phoenix and Tempe are the most walkable. Yeah, I would have to agree with that there as well. You could also argue that like Central Mesa is also kind of walkable, not to the same extent, but it does have some of that infrastructure. Not quite up to where Phoenix and Tempe are, but it definitely is no slouch in terms of Arizona urbanism. Other cool cities for urbanism in Arizona, you have Flagstaff in the north, which is a small little college town. It's got a nice little bus service and it's quite cyclist friendly. And then you have Tucson with this little streetcar, and it's got some nice walkable neighborhoods, especially around the college and downtown. But other than that, yeah, it's Arizona's most lacking, but it's got some great little neighborhoods. And if you visit especially during wintertime, it's especially wonderful. I dare you to find a walkable place in Alabama. You've given me a challenge, and now I must accept. I must accept. I will absolutely, real poltergoose. I will take you up on your offer. I will take you up on your offer. So let's see. Do we have any walkable areas in the state of Alabama? I'm first going to go to Tuscaloosa. And we are going to see Tuscaloosa. Because Tuscaloosa, if you don't know, is a college town. And college towns are generally a little bit more walkable than anywhere else, usually in a state with not a lot of walkability. So obviously we got the University of Alabama here. I won't count the campus itself because I feel like that's cheating. Otherwise, I could just say University of Alabama campus right here. Boom. The only parking is in this little corner right here, and you got your answer at the end of the day. But walkable neighborhoods. Downtown looked kind of promising, but we're kind of getting a lot of parking over here. These streets don't look too horrible. Maybe if we go over towards the university, but not quite in it. We're going to go to Audubon Place. We'll see how walkable this is. I don't see a lot of business. Oh, we do have some businesses. I'll consider it walkable if it has a grocery store in it. Like a legitimate grocery store that's like kind of... Oh, okay, we got a Publix over here. You could kind of count Audubon Place, this small little neighborhood, as like a little walkable neighborhood out here in Tuscaloosa. I wouldn't completely write it off as the most walkable neighborhood in the state, but it does have a supermarket. It's got some more walkable streets over here. Actually, ooh, I don't know. I mean, the developments... Oh, these are some very narrow streets. Okay. Setback's a little far, but, I mean, we've got some more or some more slightly higher density development over here off of 8th Street. I'm sure this is probably where all the frats are. Yeah, this looks like a frat row over here. This kind of looks like where I used to live in Florida, almost. Mobile? I guess that could kind of also be one, maybe downtown, but... Let's just see. I want to see this University Boulevard. Have they done anything exciting with it? Ooh, not looking too walkable over here. It mostly just kind of looks... I mean, it's like you can tell that it's got good bones. Like, look at this. Like, this isn't bad per se. It could definitely be a whole lot better. But, like, you have these two-story developments here. You've got some nice street trees over on this left-hand side. I don't know how ADA accessible this is, though. But you've got a really nice setback on this building right here. Even Waffle House is right up against the street. Look at that. Have you guys ever seen a Waffle House with this kind of setback? This is actually kind of impressive. Oh, but yeah, I mean, a lot of this still looks like kind of like almost suburban strip mall. Like, here we go. We got kind of a nice area over here, but like this also... Yeah, I mean, it doesn't look bad. Like, it doesn't look bad. Like, this is fine. Like, it isn't horrible, but I feel like Tuscaloosa could absolutely work on that. Not a bad option. I heard Rob say Mobile. My city has a neighborhood like that. One problem, the Publix gets deliveries on 53-foot semis, which don't fit well in the narrow streets. Yeah, that makes sense. I don't get why cities or why businesses like to do that. Kind of ineffective, but oh yeah. I mean, not... Some of these blocks are nice. This doesn't look bad. Oh, wow, this is actually really nice. This just looks like a bar street, though. It's like, there's not much else other than, like, drinking that you can do down here. I like these bus liveries, though. Oh, okay, look at that. We got some actual bike parking for some daylighting right here for this little Genghis Khan burger place, or whatever this is called. But, yeah, we got some daylighting. We got some street seating. We got some of these old... like French-style buildings over here, too. This is actually a really nice neighborhood. Honestly, this little intersection right here is pretty awesome. I mean, you wouldn't expect this in Alabama. We're going to go down this little alleyway. Maybe there's some more. Maybe not. Who knows? This street doesn't look awful. It definitely looks like it could use more business, though, and that parking lot ain't helping. We got hotel right there. Yeah, I mean, it looks like the very, very core of the downtown looks walkable, but other than that, I mean, not that great there. But yeah, I mean, I guess I would honestly count. I'm sure Birmingham and Montgomery probably have at least one walkable neighborhood in them. Fort Collins, Colorado. I've heard good things about Fort Collins too. So let's take a look at that. Fort Collins, where is it? Chat, if you have any cities that you want me to check out on stream, I would love to do so. I'm going to type that in. I can never find it on maps. I'm usually pretty good with geography, but... oh, is this where the university is? Okay, Colorado State. Oh, it has a busway. I'm a sucker for busways. Where is said busway? Is this said busway? This is the busway. It's not a busway. It's a glideway. Fancy, fancy. Look at that. Oh, and its own dedicated stations? Oh, I love college towns that have BRT. It really just adds on to the wonders. This is how you do BRT. Cities that say BRT and then have those little shitty plastic stations, that's not BRT. If your BRT doesn't have a nice trash can boarding platform and arrival screens, I don't know what to tell you. That's not BRT. Further north. Yeah, I found it. The people of Mobile likely view Alabama in a similar way as the Philly area. People with a view middle and north of PA as Pennsylvania. I don't know if I agree with that there. Honestly, like, realistically, like, it really, like, a lot of people kind of just in the South see Mobile probably the same way as they see, like, Birmingham or Montgomery as, like, the big city around them. But we're talking about small cities viewing big cities, and that's kind of how it always is. Google car broke the rules and drove in the busway. That is true. Actually, oh, and it's got a nice little multi-use path right next to it. Oh, we got some more people breaking the rules. Wonder if their license plate is on here. We can get them a ticket. Yeah, get them a ticket 10 or 11 years in the future. Yeah, in terms of Miami versus Orlando, it's definitely Miami. Orlando has like a busway and then commuter rail, and it's not even all week commuter rail. It's like a 5 day a week commuter rail with Sunrail. Miami has the Metro Mover, an actual subway, multiple busways, and yeah, commuter rail that runs all week. It's not like Miami is anything special transit wise. Like, Metro Mover is great, don't get me wrong. Like, there's a lot of, like, Metro Rail and Metro Mover are good systems that could definitely use some expansion. The problem is that Miami is such a huge metro area, and if you want to include the rest of South Florida as well too, it's massive to the point where Metro Rail and Metro Mover are going to have to do some serious expansion if they want to cover that. But I just don't see the political will in Miami to actually do that. Epcot's got the most efficient system in the country. Might I introduce you to the New York City subway? The New York City subway is still the most efficient system. The New York City subway is good on a global scale. I think a lot of people in North America like to think that the New York City subway is awful. And while at some point service can definitely struggle with like delays and stuff, it is still by and far the best transit network in North America, and by and far some of the best in the world. Like, the system is a legacy system, sure, but it is a very good legacy system. It's better than the MBTA, it's better than Chicago, it's better than a lot of stuff over in Europe that you'll see. Honestly, like, a lot of people love to shit on North America until it comes to New York, and then when people try to do that, they just get immediately owned because they realize how good the frequencies are on these lines. One of my favorite things, too, is that you'll see New Yorkers complain about the transit that they have in their city. They'll be like, this is unusable. And their version of unusable is like a 5-minute headway on the 7 train. I just want, please just show me the schedule for the 7 train. The 7 train is like the holy grail of service. Look at this. Look at this. Those are trains like every okay, there is a bit of a gap once it gets to nighttime, but like, look at that. Like that is ridiculous. Okay, no, those are actually the two different directions. I can't read apparently. That's like a train every 5 minutes, guys. That's absurd. It is absolutely an incredible system. It's a legacy system, but it is an incredible legacy system. And you cannot sleep on that fact because it is absolutely wonderful. Hello, what are your thoughts on Carmel, Indiana? Do you think it's ready for a bus system? There have been talks about it for years. I will only take Carmel, Indiana seriously once it gets a bus system. For right now, it is more or less just kind of a, what you call it, a new urbanist development that's all bark and no bite. If your city has good land use, or at least half decent land use like Carmel does, the only thing that Carmel has really done is built some bike corridors and then put their buildings in front of their parking lots rather than vice versa. They actually need to step it up and get some actual transit in the city, or else I'm not going to take it seriously. Once it does, though, I mean, I will take Carmel seriously because Indianapolis has been they've been putting in the work too. Literally, their state hates them. Their state has been trying to get all their transit banned. Like, they've been trying to get their BRT projects watered down further and further at the state level. And the state also banned light rail back in 2014 from being built in Indianapolis. But Indianapolis and Indigo still manages to get BRT built in the city. Solid BRT, mind you. And it's amazing that they can do it. I think, honestly, the Indigo Rapid lines are much better and more impressive than Carmel, Indiana. Like, this is good BRT. This is what you want from BRT. You want it to be a fully separated system to the point where it's actually effective in moving people and having off-board payment and having nice stations and frequent service. And it's just overall the better system. Daybreak, Utah is urbanism done right. Yeah, it's built around the red line. It definitely needs to do some more infill development on some of its empty lots. But yeah, I mean, it could definitely be a really excellent city soon enough. With the red line running to it. Utah's doing some stuff right, and they don't get enough credit for it in my eyes. Thoughts on Norfolk, Virginia? It's interesting. It's an interesting little area. I gotta say that the region is quite interesting in terms of its transit connections. You have the Tide, which is technically, I think, considered the worst ridership light rail in the country, which is actually very impressive. But that's also because it was just not built to what it should have been, and also they haven't really done much to the line to make it any better. We're gonna look at. I want to get it to show up on the maps. Yeah, we're not driving that distance. Oh, wow, Google. Thank you for giving me this very effective map that surely shows the actual route that it takes. Yeah, the Tide is just such a weird service. Like, it definitely could be effective if it gets extended and more services added onto it. But in its state right now, it is the lowest ridden light rail system in the U.S., and for good reason. It's just because the land use around the stations is just not great. This is a really nice station, though. I got to give that to them. They did do a good job of building out some of their stations. The Tide was my system for a couple of years. I'm so sorry, Austin. I did a scrap on Craigslist. Apartments in Champaign was one of the most affordable I found on the list. Have you seen the NYC subway capital program? I have seen some of it and what they want to do in their improvements. Very good for accessibility. They need to keep on actually adding more accessibility service to their service and actually making some of those stations ADA compliant. Champaign-Urbana has a really good transit system for what it is. Yep, University of Illinois is down there, and they need good bus service out there because in wintertime it kind of sucks to cycle. But the land use around the stations is also really good too, and they have decent inner-city connections to like Chicago and cities south of there too. So the area around U of I is pretty great, honestly. Like this is some solid land use over here. There is obviously still a lot of parking lots and stuff, but dollar for dollar, great city to go to. Champagne is around $800 on average, but that was 2 years ago. Probably not too much. Okay, Orlando's BRT is called Limo, and it's not all that useful as you could guess. Yeah, Orlando's got some like busways in downtown, but oh man, it's just really not that effective of a system. It's just it could be so much better, but like it's just hamstrung by the state where it's in. And you can't forget this atrocious monstrosity that's in the city. Like there are some great neighborhoods around Orlando, don't get me wrong. Like Lake Eola Heights is awesome, but like man, some of that land use around the city is just oh man, it's atrocious. What city that doesn't have a heavy rail metro would you add one to if you could? Cecil, my addition would be Houston. Houston, the fourth largest city in the U.S., does not have a single heavy rail metro line. It's got like basically 2.5 light rail lines and a couple of watered down bus rapid transit lines, and it's the fourth largest city in the country. But it has nothing. Nothing at the moment, which is super disappointing. I think a city of Houston size could really benefit from almost a BART style system where you kind of mix metro and like regional rail. It really could be an effective way of actually moving people around the Houston metro area just because of how much sprawl it has. I think I started asking questions right before the 2 hour mark up until the end of the stream. That's actually pretty awesome. I gotta say, asking questions is always great in chat. Thoughts on improving transit in very linear urban areas? Miami, Front Range, Seattle-ish. It's getting those north-south. It's getting those lines on that corridor correct. So I think Seattle did a really good job with the one line. Now it just has to kind of feed into it at this point. And I'll obviously connect to Bellevue and Redmond. I wouldn't say Seattle is basically a line because it does have Bellevue and Redmond over here. It's almost like a Y. It's kind of weirdly shaped in terms of its sprawl. But like, I guess Miami would probably be the better option for that because Miami is literally just a straight line. But yeah, I mean, it's really getting that north-south line to be incredibly frequent and also making sure that you have east-west lines along it. Having that like spine and then basically like, what do you call it? Like, why am I blanking on the name of them? That like ribs or something like that to actually connect to the spine and get service up and down the corridor to be effective. And then, of course, you can run more north and south lines and add on to the effectiveness of that and make the city really, really well done with transit. Yes, Planet Axolotl. Miami is trying to do some more transit building with Tri-Rail. They really love Tri-Rail and Metro Mover. Metro Rail kind of is like the forgotten child, but Tri-Rail is going to be running on, allegedly soon, probably in the next 10 years, the Northeast Corridor, which will use the Florida East Coast tracks and bring it into Miami Central without having to go wide on these former CSX tracks to come all the way back into downtown Miami. It'll serve a whole bunch of neighborhoods like Biscayne Park and North Miami Beach and really be that connection to the city. All right. I think the reason why BART is effective is because of the way the Bay Area's geography is shaped. Yeah, I would agree so too, but you can't remember that. You also have to remember that it wasn't built alone. It was also built with MARTA and with DC Metro, and I think that Houston could really benefit from a system like it. You have close stop spacings close to downtown and further out stop spacings the further out you go into the sprawl, and then you connect those with bus lines or other transit lines. I think the problem with Atlanta is they stopped expanding out the lines in the city. And that's really what's killing them right now is the region kept up with the sprawl. The region kept sprawling incredibly. But they stopped building more lines out here in Atlanta or stopped extending the lines that they had. And that's really ineffective for transit. Do you think the Miami South-Dade Transitway is good? Just the way that they kind of butchered that one is just... Oh, man. It's brutal. It's brutal. It's going to be it's going to have crossing gates for buses, which other systems have, but the buses have to come to a complete stop before they actually trigger the crossing gates. And on top of that, it's extending basically on what should be more Metro Rail line. Like if you extended the Metro Rail, you would have a more effective corridor rather than doing the whole bus rapid transit but making the bus suck. It's very, very dumb as to why just trigger the crossing gates to go down when the buses come through. The buses actually have to go to a full complete stop, wait for the gates to come down, and then proceed forward. Just a ridiculous design for the city. Houston also has a lot of districts and skyscrapers where you can actually see skyscrapers in a street, which bus lines the highest ridership in. Oh my gosh, I can't read. Houston also has a lot of districts and neighborhoods where you can actually see skyscrapers in a street, which bus lines the highest ridership line in the south and rivals the red line in ridership. Interesting. That is interesting about Houston. Houston is quite not well built out, but it is quite primed for a system that could actually move people fast through the city. Other than, using light rail. I think the light rail does have its purpose, especially for the immediate neighborhoods, but it does need something a bit more substantial. Yeah, I think Houston could really benefit from an RTD Line A type route through the city. Is the S.J. BART extension the most overbuilt transit project in history? That's if it gets off the ground, yes. I think, what was it? I did a video talking about it with transit costs, but it was like $12 billion to actually build, which is absurd. It's absolutely absurd that it costs that much to build transit. But also, at the same time, too, it's also because they're trying to minimize the neighborhood impact, and by deep boring underneath suburban homes, it's just the way to absolutely increase your costs for no reason. Miami North Corridor is going to be a new metro rail line, which might be the Blue Line. Yeah, I don't think that there's been any real funding for that to actually get it built, but I mean, it would be quite nice if it does get built. You wouldn't expect El Paso to have one, but it's nice. The El Paso trolley is definitely a system of all time. It actually has lower ridership than some like little like zoo trains and stuff like that. But yeah, the El Paso trolley is quite hilarious. It's just a little downtown circulator, but it uses old rebuilt PCC streetcars that are super awesome. Here, let's pull it up in chat. Yeah, they use these little I especially like the teal coloring on this one, but they use rebuilt PCC streetcars. Agreed. The more BRT lines that Indigo can build on the level of the red line, the better the whole system becomes. Yeah, no, definitely. And I think Indy is definitely primed for its BRT revolution, especially with getting more frequency on its system and more coverage as well, too. I think Indigo is doing the right things. It's just so hamstrung by its own state. It's just ridiculous. Any way to get from Miami to Miami Beach with public transit? There is. You can take the bus across to South Beach. The problem is that is a corridor that is constantly jammed up with traffic. So there is a bus that goes over the MacArthur Causeway, and you can take it. I think it's actually fairly frequent. I think it's a 15-minute service. But its problem is that this bridge, the MacArthur Causeway, always backs up with some of the worst traffic you can ever imagine. I think it's the 100. It's, as you can see on that, it's pretty frequent. It runs throughout the night, basically. Like, that's good service. That's what you want. You want that kind of actual frequency. The problem is that MacArthur Causeway, pretty horrible for traffic. And if you have that kind of horrible level of traffic, you can absolutely improve your service by running, I don't know, maybe Metro Rail would be the most effective way. But the city has floated Metro Mover because it's easier to get those Metro Mover extensions built. Metro Mover is their little automated people mover system that they have in the city, and it's probably the one effective people mover that we have in the U.S. Like, this has been nothing short of a miracle in success for people movers, but it's kind of in its own little niche for that because it moves people around the downtown area and does what, the people movers of the past promised. But I think an extension to South Beach would make a lot of sense. It's just, I don't know if it can handle that kind of capacity. Since the description says you're playing transit-oriented games, has anybody been looking into junctions? Suppose this released this year and supposed to be cheaper than CAD software. Interesting. I actually have never heard of junctions. I'll have to take a look into it. The lane to the furthest right. Separate it with some median and leave it only for buses. Yeah, you see, the problem is that you get a lot of NIMBYs out here who do not want that to happen. To be fair, all of South Beach is pretty much NIMBY heaven. Also, these little islands, too, are just loaded with, like, the most turbo NIMBYs with all the money in the world you could ever imagine. But yeah, I mean, there was also a monorail proposal to go out to the island, which I'm not the biggest fan of monorails, especially if they're not already existing in the network. But you know, they could have a Metro Mover line that goes into South Beach, or more ideally Metro Rail. But it's just you just deal with the worst turbo NIMBYs possible when you want to get anywhere near the ocean, because God forbid you affect anything that has to deal with the ocean. If you're dealing with FDOT, bus lanes are usually a non-starter. Yeah, so fun fact that I learned about about transit in Miami is that Metro Mover is technically considered, when looking for funding, a bus rapid transit project. So they use a bus rapid transit funding strategy to get extensions and more funding to improve the Metro Mover. It's actually such a genius idea for a city, because if you think about it, it's basically just rubber tired cars on a guideway, but they're bigger cars, of course, but they can move effectively people around the city, and that's good. That's a good thing for Miami. I'm glad that it has Metro Mover as well. Metro Mover is free, so that generates a lot of ridership for it too, because if you don't have to pay a fare, then why would you ever need to think about it? You just hop up on the platform and get on your Metro Mover, go a couple stops down the street, and you're there at your destinations. FDOT is a little bit more flexible than you might think too. Tampa actually utilized FDOT funds to get a whole bunch of bike lanes built in downtown Tampa. And we're not talking about crappy bike lanes. We're talking about actual good bike lanes. So I'll take you over to Tampa, Florida. Forgot, is the Cass Street Bridge? I think it's the Cass. No, it's not the Cass. No, yeah, it is the Cass Street. Yes. So when I was in Tampa last time, I actually biked across the Cass Street Bridge. And if you can see, these are bike lanes that were actually funded with by FDOT when they did the street reconstructions over here. So these are bike lanes funded by FDOT, if you can believe that. Also, it goes over the bridge, which a lot of cities seem to have this problem where they can't get transit funded over a bridge, or they can't get bike lanes over a bridge because engineering usually has some sort of complaint. But they did it here. I mean, these grates aren't optimal, but you're not usually dealing with ice out here in Tampa, so this is a pretty solid little bike lane here. I've cycled through it. I've cycled through a lot of downtown Tampa actually, and it's really not that bad to cycle here. I wouldn't say FDOT did it. That was more or less the city of Tampa that kind of twisted FDOT's arm into actually building the bike lanes for the street redesigns. But yeah, I mean, essentially, yes. Thoughts on golf courses in an urban area? Don't get me started. Those things are the worst possible thing you could ever do for your city. If you want to absolutely give the middle finger to anybody during a housing crisis, you build a golf course right during some of the most high-value land in a city. For example, this golf course, the Riviera Country Club, right in the middle of Miami and some of the most high-value land in the entire country, it's just golf course. And houses on the golf course, but yeah, golf course. They have plans to make a limited stop route to the beach on the 100. Yeah, I mean, that's good, but we'll see if Miami can pull that off. I like playing golf. I understand that, but like, I don't think that golf should be an activity that's done in the middle of a city. I think if we leave that more to the ex-urban areas, like how we do with like racetracks and stuff like that, it would be a much better choice. But having golf courses in the heart of our urban cores is really a bad land use opportunity by any means, especially during a housing crisis. That is acres of land that could be housing. This is also another really, really egregious selection of golf courses right here in San Francisco, some of the most expensive real estate in the country, especially on the west side of the city. You just got multiple golf courses over here that just absolutely eat up so much land that could be housing. You've got a couple more too that are. I'd say this one in the Presidio is pretty egregious. This is really egregious right here in the Presidio, especially with how expensive that area is. Do Americans really love golf that much? In Los Angeles, there are maybe 5 public parks and maybe 25 golf courses. Rich Americans love golf. Keep that in mind. Rich Americans love golf. Not regular Americans. Rich Americans love golf. If you got money, there's a good chance you might like golf. Kind of bummed RM Transit never did a video on Metro Rail. I thought he did. I thought he talked about Metro Rail and Metro Mover. I don't know. I might be forgetting it. Your question on Daly City? Here. Let's see. I didn't see any question on Daly City. Unless you're talking about your Persona 5 question. Oh wait, no, that might actually be the wrong person. Yeah. I didn't see any questions on Daly City. Hartford has an overbuilt busway. I wouldn't consider it overbuilt. The CT Fast Track is actually pretty effective. It's probably a top tier busway that you have for BRT in the country. I think it was actually one of the only gold rated bus rapid transit corridors in the U.S. when they were doing that through the agency that rated them. I haven't seen a whole lot of new ratings from them, but yeah, Hartford was one of the cities with CT Fast Track that actually had a really good rating. That's the additional parking, but yeah, you have a really nice bus corridor. I know it was converted from actual rail, which does kind of suck, but like this is still effective, and BRT was the way that they were going to make this corridor work, then, hats off to them. RM Transit mentioned it in a video but never released an episode dedicated to Metro Rail. I'm actually shocked. Like, that's interesting. I thought Reese would have made a video on that. He covered like everything. He was going crazy. He was on that video grind, and I got to respect that. What do you think of Daly City, California? It's totally suburban despite being number 7 in population density and number 16 in transit mode share among U.S. cities over 100K. I've been through Daly City. I haven't spent a whole lot of time in Daly City itself. Land use could definitely be a lot better, but also you have to remember one thing about San Francisco is that it is quite hill restricted with some of its geography being wedged between the ocean and mountains. But yeah, I mean, like, this mall right here could definitely be some really dense transit-oriented development. And I know that Colma over here is basically just nothing but cemeteries, which is actually why it got a little nickname Coma. But yeah, I mean, like, Daly City could be doing better, but, a lot of this single-family housing, we can't really get changed unless the homeowner decides to get rid of it. But I think we could probably edit our zoning codes to actually allow for that ability to, be able to change and allow for higher density. Let him enjoy his retirement in peace. Trust me, Reese is enjoying his retirement, and he gets to occasionally post on Blue Sky and his articles as well too. So I think he's enjoying retirement, and more power to him. How do you think you could make VTA light rail better? I wonder what's the greenest city in America, as in most trees. I think, weirdly enough, that's Jacksonville, Florida, but don't quote me on that. I know that there's studies out there that say that a lot of Florida cities are technically the greenest, but, like, just because you have a lot of trees doesn't mean that you're, a great city environmentally. VTA light rail. A true menace of a system. What could you do to improve it? I think you could probably improve some of the zoning around stations. I think that's probably your best way of doing anything. Just because that's just the South Bay's problem, is that it just has horrible land use. Like, San Jose is just not great for land use. I mean, obviously, these kinds of design choices aren't great, but you can usually overcompensate that by actually building some good land use around stations. Gee, thank you so much for that super chat. I really appreciate it. All your support's really appreciated, guys. I just want to let you know. But yeah, I mean, coming back to VTA, I mean, if you just built a lot more good density around it and fed into it with, some good bus service, you could actually get some more decent ridership. but unfortunately you don't. And yeah, there are some weird little goofy things that absolutely hurt the ridership, like this, like the orange line that was brought up. G brought it up over here in chat. The orange line is street running over here, and elevating it over the intersections could absolutely help. But just giving it that priority some way, somehow, whether it's signalized priority to start, could absolutely help with service. It's not like VTA is completely lost on this. Extending the network isn't going to help that, but it really is getting that land use changed around here and getting that density so that way people can actually ride the system rather than it just sitting empty with poor ridership. Also, I think closing some other stations could probably help as well, too. Like, if there's one off the top of my head, it's probably Bayshore NASA. Why does this exist? Why is this a station? Why? You could have put the station over here and it would have been fine. You would have gotten some ridership from some of the businesses over here. But they put the station across from this Strode, and it gets, like, no ridership. VTA is the Valley Transit Authority, and that is San Jose and the South Bay's little light rail experiment. VTA is America's worst light rail by a long shot. Ooh, I want to disagree with that because I feel like there is a worse one. I'm just forgetting about it. I want to say the Tide in Norfolk might actually be worse in terms of ridership, but it's also because it's one line. If we're going off networks, yeah, maybe VTA probably is the worst because it's even worse than Sacramento at the end of the day. Like, it is quite disappointing to see San Jose, California's biggest city. Actually, I think, yeah, is San Jose California's biggest city? Let's see. No, Los Angeles is, but it is the biggest city in the Bay Area. And seeing it with just 3 measly little light rail lines and then Caltrain is just kind of disappointing. Like, I think it could do so much better. But yeah, single line, probably the Tide is worse. But if we're talking about network, then yeah, probably VTA. Close second probably being SAC RT. SAC RT is kind of like Portland if it just fizzled out, but, you know, I can't hate on SAC RT that much. I actually quite enjoy it. It has this charm of being bad. Like, unlike VTA where it's just bad, SAC RT has this weird charm of, like, it operated some really, really, really old rolling stock, and it was just, oh man, it still had stop buttons for the light rail. Like, you still had to request a stop, and on top of that, you also had to deal with the problem of having to press the button to open the doors too. So I know some people who actually missed their trains or missed getting off the train because of that. Which is hilarious to think about. That's still a problem with systems now. But yeah, I mean, I think a lot of light rail systems, especially in California and on the West Coast, do have room to improve. But there are a lot of really great systems out here as well, too. Sacramento, home of the A's. That's true. Jekyll and Hyde-ass system. For San Francisco, yeah, I mean, it just depends on what you're taking. Really, it really all goes down line by line, too. It's not like there's any, like, specific system. Do you know that LA has 46 different bus systems? Miles in Transit made a video about it. Yeah, honestly, that's my favorite Miles video. Just the mental anguish that buses in LA provided for him. I don't know why. It was just fun watching him suffer with that. But yeah, I mean, there definitely needs to be some consolidation because there are just way too many random little bus routes for small cities in the area that do not need to exist. Like, a lot of it could be consolidated under, like, Foothill Transit or Long Beach Transit or Metro or, honestly, like, Big Blue Bus. But yeah, no, it's really, it's kind of goofy. Thoughts on the new DC Purple Line LRT from Maryland? It's pretty exciting to see that come to fruition, actually. That's Baltimore. Yeah, it's going to be kind of like, if you guys can see my cursor, it's going to be like kind of up over here. or actually it might actually be a little bit further out, but yeah, it's going to be kind of up over here, kind of connecting some of the WMATA line or some of the DC Metro lines, and being like kind of the start of a little radial system. So hopefully that does help out and really connect DC a bit better by transit. Because it's not going to be, the system that people are going to take the whole line. Like, people are not going to take the whole purple line from end to end most of the time. Most of the time, they'll be using it to connect to a different metro line or to get from a metro line to their home. But yeah, it's going to be kind of an exciting little addition. We don't have that many radial lines in the US, and just seeing that will be kind of nice. What do you think of the light rail in Alberta cities? It's underrated by Urbanists, IMO. Highway to Heaven 91. I honestly don't think it's that underrated anymore. I think it may be in like the mainstream thought logic of transit it is. But, I mean, I guess to be fair, I do talk to a lot of Albertans. But, like, I do understand that Calgary and Edmonton do have some really nice light rail. I think I'm contractually obligated as a host of Radio Free Urbanism to say that Calgary is better than Edmonton, but yeah, I mean, they both have really good light rail systems, and they're both pretty solid. Highly recommend it, and they get good ridership because they know how to feed their bus routes into their light rail. Los Angeles is going to have to do a bit better than 2 rapid transit lines. Yeah, LA's got more than 2 rapid transit lines. I mean, obviously it has the 2. I mean, if you're meaning heavy rail metro, then yeah, it just has the B and the D right now. The D is getting a pretty major extension to actually be like a reasonably long line. But other than that, I mean, yeah, there's also the Sepulveda line, which is most likely going to be an automated heavy rail metro from pretty much following the 405 all the way up from the valley all the way down here towards the kind of near the airport area. But yeah, I mean, LA is doing a pretty solid job in terms of building out new transit. I mean, there are some mistakes that they made. The C line running mostly on the highway is kind of a mistake, and the A line kind of mostly running through industrial area isn't great. But, for the most part, LA is doing a good job, and I think light rail is going to be very effective for building up the transit network out there. Calgary is unequivocally better than Edmonton, can confirm. Thank you, Austin. Very cool. Should WMATA build the Bloop, or should there be a different plan for the Blue Line? I've heard both good and bad things about the Bloop. For those who don't know, there's been considerations in WMATA to actually loop the Blue Line underneath the river here and connect it all the way up and kind of run it around in a loop under the what's it called, it's like the yard, like the it's called like the federal yards or something like that, and the National Harbor, basically running the Blue Line underneath and kind of looping it back up to kind of relieve some of the pressure on the line in the city. But yeah, I mean, it could definitely work. I've heard that there would be some operational problems with that, but it doesn't sound like it's the end of the world. Cemeteries take up a lot of space too. Moving cemeteries used to be common. Yeah, I'm not in disagreement with that. That's kind of an unpopular opinion, but I think that, yeah, some cemeteries in some of our urban areas do need to go. Just to show how few km Edmonton's LRT system is compared to Calgary's, if Calgary's U2s had worn out... Just goes to show how few kilometers Edmonton's LRT system is compared to Calgary's. If Calgary's U2s had worn out quicker. Yeah, that is true. That's true. Many people are saying this. Calgary goated for getting new S200s, unlike Edmonton. Yeah, we'll see how well they do. I don't know how much I believe in Siemens Mobility anymore to bring in a good product. They've just been so overburdened that their new trains have been having some issues, but we'll see about that. Detroit is another city that needs a metro or even a light rail. This is I can agree to you on that one. I will always say that Woodward needs its own, or Woodward alone could justify its own, rail section, whether it's light rail or a metro, just because it literally goes all the way out into the suburbs, and you could just build on that entire right of way straight from downtown Detroit all the way out as far into the suburbs. Or if you want to be crazy and be awesome, go out into Pontiac. But yeah, I mean, Detroit has some great corridors for building transit, and I really wish they had the money and the political will out there to do it. Also, Edmonton has more transit-oriented developments, albeit marginally. Does it? I mean, both the cities are good at keeping their sprawl minimized, but, I mean, that's definitely interesting. I think one of the advantages that Canada has on the US too, and how it has its sprawl minimized, is just purely because their cities have not developed as fast as US cities. So a lot of US cities peaked in population, especially in the Midwest. They peaked around the 1940s and 1950s. The problem is that Canada was still very agricultural and not as industrial, especially out over here in these western cities like Calgary, Edmonton, Winnipeg, and Vancouver. So they hadn't sprawled as much. They hadn't seen that giant population boom in the 20th century, and so they didn't really have that kind of suburban white flight to the suburbs that a lot of US cities did. So you'll have Calgary, where it does have suburbs, but they're not nearly as bad as, say, St. Louis or Cleveland or Detroit. And Vancouver, it has its suburbs, definitely does, but it's not as bad as even its neighbor to the south in Seattle or even further south in Portland. But yeah, I think a lot of Canadian cities have a clear advantage on that. They have less sprawl, and that's generally a good thing. The one exception is Toronto, of course. This is the exception. This is an absolute nightmare of sprawl. They have done a decent job of getting GO Transit out to a lot of it, but I mean, still, it's conquering the sprawl is kind of hard to do. Yeah, I mean, I have a little bit of suspicions against Siemens right now, but they definitely are better than some of the alternatives in North America, especially Alstom. Alstom is just so bad; they just can't do anything right. I would not wanna I would not contract anything for a city through Alstom. Stadler and CAF have been doing a good job, especially Stadler. CAF has honestly not dropped the ball. I know that they had some issues with their systems, but they've been doing a good job with the Urboses in Kansas City. So maybe it's not the end of the world there. Maybe some CAF could probably win some more contracts out here in the U.S. Canadian post-war suburbs are far more dense. Yeah, and that's because they just weren't building as many of them as well, too. They just weren't building the same amount that we had in the US. There just also wasn't that kind of demand as well for all that land as well, too. And developers in the US felt like they had the whole world to sprawl. So if you look at a lot of post-war sprawl in the US, it is quite large in terms of housing that you'll see out here. Especially once you get even more later into the 20th century. A lot of people don't realize this, but the 50s and 60s suburban sprawl is really not as bad as everything 1970 and onward. They really felt like they could truly sprawl after the 70s, after the whole highway boom. And yeah, that's another thing too. Canada really didn't have the whole highway boom. There was no Interstate Highways Act up in Canada to the same degree that there was in the US, and while they did have some interstates across the country, they weren't quite going as crazy on the urban interstates as we have here in the U.S. So if you take a look at a city, say Chicago, Chicago's a great city. I love Chicago. Grew up in the suburbs, but it's got some pretty bad urban freeways. You got the Stevenson down here, you've got the Ike over here, you've got the Kennedy up over here, and they cut right through a lot of these great urban neighborhoods, especially on the south side too with the Dan Ryan. This is pretty atrocious. This cut right through a lot of different housing and a lot of different low income communities as well too. But yeah, it really these urban freeways weren't as much of a problem in Canada as they were in the US. Obviously you still had some like this one, the Gardiner Expressway in Toronto is pretty bad, but that's the only one. Like you can maybe justify the DVP as one too, but it really was not as bad as what happened here in the US. Calgary's Green Line will be using CAF Urbos, so I'm looking forward to that. Oh, they chose the rolling stock already. They haven't even got. Oh, I guess they did get shovels in the ground, but that's kind of exciting. Um, the Calgary CAF Urbos is as ugly as fuck. It looks like cheese wedges. Did they choose the European design for that? Because I know in Kansas City they have a really tastefully done. They have some really tastefully done Urboses here. Oh, wrong thing. Let's open the folder to. I'm giving you guys some look into the whole file management here that I do. This is all proprietary info. What was I looking for again? Oh, yes. They were singing Happy Birthday on this train, but we'll skip that. we'll skip that one too because I want to look at the trains, not the. Here we go. See, I think their Urboses look wonderful out here. This is a normal looking train, or a normal looking streetcar. Like that looks fine. Like this looks that wouldn't be out of place in any other city. Like it's a fine looking streetcar. Most Canadian cities wanted to keep their historical buildings intact, so they never got a lot of freeways, save for the GTA in Montreal. I'd say the historical building preservation in the U.S. really kicked off around the 60s, and by that time we had already done a whole lot of the interstate damage as well too, and a lot of urban renewal as well too. There is still a lot of historic buildings that were saved, but we did lose a lot in the U.S. But a lot of U.S. cities, yeah, they did lose their historical buildings and developments, which absolutely sucks. There were a lot of really beautiful buildings that we lost, but yeah, I mean, it's still cool that we have still a lot of them. Streetcar definitely shouldn't have wraps on the windows. Yeah, I agree with that too. That does kind of suck. I hate the dots. The dots are annoying, but this streetcar is free. They don't charge anything to ride it, so I can't have too many complaints about it. Some of the wraps are a little less intrusive than others, but yeah, a wrap is still a wrap, and you still get the dots anyways. Two in my family work for Siemens, and they have only praises about Alstom quality. They say they wouldn't have done any better with the Cella given the crazy things asked by the client and FRA. Well, that's kind of crazy because Alstom also delayed their construction on the. They delayed their process on their own TGVs in France, and also we haven't heard a word for them on their Metro orders or on anything with the K car replacements in Philadelphia with SEPTA. So it's kind of interesting. I don't trust Alstom to do anything. If you're giving money to Alstom, I'd say you're honestly just kind of throwing your money into a fire pit. But what am I to judge? I've only seen the Avelias sitting on the sidelines for 5 years now. I think there's a little bit of anger to have there, especially with Alstom just complaining and then them never having a good product. So they had this problem too back with the original Acellas too, but Siemens was at least able to make some stuff for the Northeast corridor. So I think it's just the French company really having the mindset of not wanting to actually put in the hard work for the client. But just a thought there. What should we do about urban freeways in America? Yeah, a lot of them we can remove. Some of them are essential and we might need to keep. But for the most part, I think a lot of them we can actually remove. Let's see, for example, I mean, we're already in Sacramento on the maps, but the I-5 could definitely be a lid of some kind. Even though it's right next to the river, I think it could definitely be a lid. But this 50 right here could probably go, honestly. A lot of these highways in the cities are just completely useless. I think a lot of it is Buy America products. I don't know about that one, but yeah, I mean, it's just, you would think that they'd be able to match that for such a large market in North America, at least with the US, but yeah, I mean, for most urban freeways, we can, for the most part, just get rid of them. It's cheaper than keeping them around. I mean, because then we have to re-maintain them as well, too. But yeah, I mean, a lot of them we can also cap as well, too, because it's just, some of them we do need still. Some of them we do need, and some of them are just too politically hard to get rid of, but a lot of them we can just honestly get rid of because there's not that many users. Wasn't there a highway in St. Louis that wasn't built? Yeah, there were a lot of highways around the U.S. that just weren't built. There's actually one creator, his name's Peter Dibble. He does a really, really good job of explaining the highways that weren't built in Portland. And he was also talking about one in Salem as well, too, that wasn't built, that was turned into a parkway, this parkway right here. But, yeah, I mean, there are a lot of highways that just never got built. Remove the 110 or the 101 and 110 in downtown LA. The 110, I believe that's the Arroyo Seco and the Harbor. No, I'm thinking of yeah. Wait, no. Yeah, the 110. Yeah, the Arroyo Seco. Yeah, this one could probably go, or at least get turned back into a street boulevard like it was before. But yeah, I mean, like, there's a lot of just useless highways in LA, especially, that just do nothing but make the city a worse experience to be in. The 101, yeah, on the east side over here could definitely go as well too. It's just there's just yeah, I mean, if you literally just kept it to being just the 10, it would probably be a significantly better experience to get around Los Angeles. Because yeah, this highway right here, the 110 is just it's brutal. It's such a bad highway. And also all these highways get gridlocked all throughout the day, so it's not even like it's effective at moving people. Railscape, why is the Sacram RT such a bad system? I wouldn't say it's bad per se. I think it's bad in the fact that the core is fine. The core did some good stuff. Like, it goes through some good, well-built neighborhoods. Like, this is nice. Like, this is fine. I've walked these streets over here. I've taken the system through here. And yeah, there's some great land use around here. I think the biggest problem you have, though, is that these are practically, once you get into like downtown proper, these are practically shared lanes. Or I'm thinking, no, they're not shared. The problem is that there is parking right next to the tracks. So if you can see this design, yeah, it is shared actually. So if you can see in downtown, these streetcar tracks or these light rail tracks are shared, and then there's parking right next door. So you get to deal with the fun fact that if someone parks just a little bit wrong, it jams up the whole light rail network. Or if someone decides to double park, your whole light rail network is all jammed up. It's incredibly brutal with how value engineered they built this. Like, this absolutely screws over the entire system. And also saying it as a 3-line system is kind of not true. It's like a 2-ish line system. This green line was originally supposed to run to the airport, but it never got the funding to. So it only goes to this one little station by itself, and it runs every 30 minutes. Every 30 minutes on the light rail. But yeah, it's just it. And also, once you get outside of downtown as well, too, it just doesn't have great land use. This is a TOD in development, but yeah, as you can see, there's no access to the station technically from outside the station. But that's not the only problem. You get a lot of crappy park and rides like this one right here, or there are some on the yellow line as well too. But overall, it's just bad land use outside of the main station, and then inside the downtown area, it just doesn't get the priority that it deserves. I wonder why Sounder South Extension is expected to open in the late 2040s. I think that's because they still have to do a bunch of incredibly long environmental review, and it's ridiculous how much our systems get delayed out here in the U.S. And also just because there's been a lot of building delays, and I think that's just because of things like getting these companies to work on time. Yeah, I mean, most light rail systems have park and rides. It's not like having one or two is going to make the system bad. What I'm showing you is like basically the standard throughout the system once you get outside of downtown. Like, there's a lot of poor land use around the stations. There's a lot of park and rides. Like, almost every station along this corridor here along Folsom Boulevard is all park and rides. And while a couple in your network isn't going to hurt it, making your whole system mainly park and rides just means that you're just a parking shuttle at the end of the day. And those neighborhoods in the city are just, yeah, it just doesn't get the priority that it deserves, and it can lead to incredible delays in the system, slow service through downtown, and just make it less appealing to riders. But yeah, at the end of a line, I mean, a park and ride isn't going to hurt you. Like, having a park and ride all the way out here near the end of the line, like say here at Iron Point Station, isn't the worst thing in the world. Like, obviously this is kind of like a little outdoor mall as well too, so that's kind of nice. But yeah, like this isn't bad near the end of your line, but if it's almost every station once you get outside of downtown, then yeah, it's kind of a bad deal that you got going on there with your system. Have you done over any overview of the Miami transit planning anyway? Sorry, just got off of work. You're all good. Welcome to the stream. And I have done some overview of Miami before. Maybe not in my videos, but definitely on the stream today. But yeah, I mean, Miami definitely needs more, but what it has is okay right now. Like, obviously it needs a lot more, but it definitely isn't bad. Cobalt, welcome to the stream. Never mind. Sacramento. Yeah, Sacramento, Sacktown. Park and Ride. Yeah, okay, I already covered that one. Honestly, feeder buses would solve the need for park and rides. Yeah, I agree. Feeder buses are super effective at actually kind of reducing the demand for the park and rides because it adds on that little last mile transit that people really want to get to, especially with these systems. But then if you're putting feeder buses into here, you want them to actually be fast once they get, to their destination. And when your system is running at maybe 20 miles inside of downtown, 20 miles an hour, maybe even slower through some of these turns, it really makes it unappealing. I know most people are getting off over here, but like still, it's just kind of ridiculous with how slow this system can get. Like if you're trying to get from, say, let's see, what's that station? And then I think the other one's got kind of a cool name. The other one I was thinking about. Let's just say you're trying to get from one station on one side of downtown to another station on the other side of downtown. Globe Avenue Station. So yeah, what is a 27-minute transit ride is a 14-minute drive or a 25-minute cycling trip. Because you have decided to make your system slow and not have that priority through downtown. This is not just a Sacramento only thing. We have this a lot pretty much everywhere. Let's see. What do you think about the preservation of heritage streetcar/LRT systems when modern rolling stock could make them better? Thinking of the Mattapan line in Boston or F Market and wharves in San Francisco. I think they're fine if you have them as like tourist people movers. Like I think the F is a really great example of that. Like there's not many people taking the F for a normal commute, and there usually is alternatives to get from, say, the Castro to downtown, or from Fisherman's Wharf into downtown. But like it's just like if you're making it an essential part of your transit service, it's kind of ridiculous, like the Mattapan line. But I mean, it's not the end of the world if you're doing it for one line that mostly tourists are using. In that case, you might actually get improved ridership over a bus line because tourists are more likely going to take the cool old streetcar than they're going to do with your standard bus. Have you seen the bill in Illinois that would create a state intercity bus system? I have not, Cobalt, but that's awesome. Illinois could absolutely use one, and it would be really nice to actually, extend out of the good state railroad network and kind of fill those gaps, like Peoria to Davenport or Springfield to Champaign. But yeah, we here in Oregon are actually trying to get actually it's a bill right now, but we're trying to get a state, basically getting our railroad management separate from the State Department of Transit. So basically creating our own train planning agency separate from roads and streets. So that means that ODOT wouldn't manage trains anymore. There would literally be a state-run agency managing the trains in the state, both freight and passenger rail, which is probably the best thing that you could do, honestly. Hey, Ethan. Enjoyed the latest podcast today. Hope things are going well. They are, Isaac. Thank you so much. The face when Houston and Phoenix managed to figure out signal priority on their LRT systems. Yeah, I know. Could you believe it? I know Phoenix runs into some issues too, and so does Houston, but they do an all right job. I think Phoenix could probably use some faster transit across the region, but that's because the sprawl is just so insane in Phoenix that light rail just cannot handle all your trips. IDK what the evolution of car-dependent suburbs were. Levittown, PA, allegedly the first of the suburban city, had some form of transit access. I think it was when you kind of, or when cities really kind of took them to new areas. Levittown was a model, but like it didn't last forever, and it wasn't the only one forever. There's actually some really great books about it. I'm kind of reading on the kind of development of how suburbs started, and suburbs have been around for a long time. Of course, they started around trains, but once cars became the opportunity and land developers no longer had to build their own private train services to get people out to suburbs where they could sell you an expensive home, then they were able to save money and stop running those services out there. Then that just kind of became the standard. What do you think is the worst heavy rail metro system? That is an interesting question. Hmm. I honestly, I hate to give it this award. I do not want to give it this award, but I think the Cleveland Red Line might have to take it. Maybe Urbano in San Juan, but like, I mean, yeah, I think I'll give it to Tren Urbano. Unfortunately, it's a little heavy rail metro network in San Juan. It goes basically from like here all the way down to like right over here. It's not particularly useful. It doesn't go to a whole lot of parts of San Juan that are super populated or super high trip generators, which is unfortunate because I think the region could use Tren Urbano could really use some good transit and could really use some upgrades. And I know it was originally part of the plan, but yeah, right now it's not in the works, and it really kind of sucks. I think the island could really use some great transit. And then from there, transit became an afterthought. Yeah, transit has all. I wish it was an afterthought, but yeah, Cleveland would probably be the worst in the lower 48. The Red Line is a heavy rail metro system, and it's not bad. It just gets low ridership because Cleveland has been so thoroughly, basically like de-densified in a lot of areas. Like this is not bad in terms of the destinations. Like it goes to universities and medical centers. It goes to downtown and it goes to the airport. It literally goes to a whole lot of high demand ridership areas. But the problem is that the area has just been so depopulated over the years that it's just not that effective. Also, there is some questionable land use on some of these stations. It's not all perfect, but yeah, I mean, it could be better at some of these stations, but I mean, like Cleveland has been struggling a lot in terms of keeping its population. But yeah, I mean, at least it's not San Juan. I don't know. And Cleveland actually has a heavy rail metro in like Detroit, so you got to give it that. It's got heavy, but I mean, this red line is actually going to be converted to technically light rail because of its boat. It's changing its rolling stock. The blue line in Phil, I would not throw the Market Frankfurt as the worst, or not Market. Yeah, Market Frankfurt. Yeah, no, it's not the worst. Neither is the Broad Street. Neither of them are bad. They're not great. They're not perfect, but they're definitely not horrible. Cleveland has been so thoroughly atomized by sprawl. This is true. Cleveland Healthline was better before COVID-19. Yeah, and also my good friend Kezel went over a lot of reasons in their video why the Healthline has kind of started to struggle. How do you get the rail transit lines to show up on Google Maps? You can get a lot of them to show up by going into this layers tab and hitting transit. So like this little transit tab. You can also do biking. Biking isn't that great though. Like these trail like bike infrastructure is constantly changing, so it doesn't give you that effective of a look, but it can kind of give you a baseline. I would take it with a grain of salt. This also isn't even my favorite transit layer to use most of the time. It's just super effective because it's like always there. Yeah, Brightline. What about Brightline West? What do I think about Baltimore's Metro subway link? I don't think it's the worst. It goes places people need to go. But it also could definitely be extended. and I really wish they would ever consider that, but I don't think Baltimore has the money or the political will right now to do so. But it goes places people need to go, but like it's just screaming. I know it was in the plans at one point to build out a whole network, but it's just screaming to go up this US Route 1 right here up to like Perry Hall or something. Like it's you can tell that Baltimore was like, we need a metro, and then 10 years later they're like, well, we can't really extend the metro. We don't have the funding for that. But we do have the money for a really crappy light rail line, and so they built the Metro light rail link. Cleveland, like most American cities, has absolutely no job centralization in the central business district, which kills the ability for transit to be a reliable trip generator. Same with amenity and institution sprawl. Yeah, I think that's also really a problem that we deal with in North America, is just kind of getting concentrated businesses again and just getting that mixed use zoning as well back in our cities too. And it is a bit of a struggle, but I think we'll eventually figure it out. Taking an edible and riding the NYC subway is a peak human experience. Ugh. Guys, I think I'm going to start wrapping it up pretty soon. So if you got any little last minute questions, honestly, I'd love to answer them. I kind of got a little bit distracted, a little bit stun locked on talking about that, and I only got a little bit of this light rail built or heavy rail built for Portland, but you know, it's a start to the network, folks. We're working on it. There we go. So this is the current network right now. This is a heavy rail metro. I think the ideas I've been seeing with the subway extension was to go to Martin Airport along the NEC. Yeah, that also makes sense too. This game is NIMBY Rails, by the way. I know I haven't hopped on it in like an hour on stream, but yeah, I've started out the stream with some NIMBY Rails, so I want to see how the stations are doing. Okay, well, they're at least... people are moving through them. That's good. People are riding the transit. The game is called NIMBY Rails. But folks, I think I'm going to wrap this up. I've been on live for a couple hours now, and it's been super great chatting with all of you. It's been a wonderful stream. I always love streaming, and I can't wait to make this more of a regular thing on Thursdays. So, yeah, I think about 5:30 on Thursday, I will be streaming. 5:30 Pacific will be my normal streaming time for all of you. So if you want to tune in to some more streams, I will be on more on 5:30 on Thursdays, 5:30 Pacific time. So thank you so much for tuning into the live stream, folks. Your support is always appreciated. Leave a like if you really enjoyed the stream. And as always, everybody, I will see you on the next stream. Thank you so much for tuning in.